memorial service next spring at the funeral home, or at the
oh, there are 2 pages?
Well, I forgot to tell the printer. Yes, you forgot to tell the printer to do 2 sides.
Aha.
testing. Anybody hear this?
Yeah.
Does it sound like?
Yeah.
We have to wait till it's not very loud.
I hear you, not it.
Okay.
Are there 5 of us? Oh, here comes.
It sounded to me like it was coming over the system. Right here.
No, it's just, all there is this little, I bought this little one because the big system reverberates down into the Facebook, and then nobody can understand when they're listening online. So I'm trying to find something that'll work for everybody.
Have you used that system since you got the microphone? And that reverberates?
Yeah, that's made it worse. And that was the same thing when I had the little speakers out in the pews.
Yeah.
They could hear me, and then a millisecond later it would come out of the speaker, so that confused people. So
Yeah.
we need to find maybe a stronger system that broadcasts right straight from here to everybody. So, we're behind again. Welcome to First Universalist up New Madison on this. It's technically not fall, but boy, it's a relief to have a chilly day in the morning, to wake up in the morning and have your windows open and not have to have the air conditioning on. So as a compromise, we have one door open and one door closed, and the fans aren't on.
What are you getting?
Do we have any announcements? Lloyd's not here today. He's at the races, and I'm going. I got invited, and I have a ticket to go to the jug next Thursday, and 2 of our horses, I'm a Chick Magnet, which I don't know why she called him that, and Racing Rebel are going to be in the jug, not the actual high price jug, but in the races on that day.
Is today a little round jug?
Well, today is, but then next Thursday is the actual race.
Lloyd generally goes to that.
Lloyd he's at some race, but the actual Little Brown Jug, and I think there's a series of races. It's not just one.
But a week-long event?
Yeah, exactly. The one that our horses are in is next Thursday, so that's when we're going. But they run all day long. Usually the races are in the evening, and these start at 11 in the morning, so we're going to find out which ones. Crystal, you're going to be here next week?
I will.
All right. Lloyd's going to be guest speaking or guest playing at El Dorado next week, and Derek has invited us over, but obviously if Crystal's here, we're not going to do that. But that's something we want to keep in mind as we switch back and forth, and you actually speak at El Dorado too, don't you?
I have once.
I'm sure they'll invite you again. And
It was a very nice experience.
Yeah, and I'm kind of encouraging people, when you're over there, we might go over and join with them to listen to you.
Okay, well, I'll talk to Derek about coordinating that then.
Yeah, well, just when you're over there, just let us know when you're going to be there.
Okay.
And
well, they have to invite me again first.
yeah, and I guess I can't speak for Derek, so. But anyway, they invited us to come next week, and I said that you were speaking here, so we appreciate the invitation, but we won't be there. Last week was the picnic, the outdoor service. I think it went off extremely well. Good turnout. I actually prefer our shelter to theirs. Got the electricity, it's close to the parking lot. There's a bathroom right there if you need it, which I don't think anybody did. And I like the seats, the picnic tables don't have those cross pieces in it. So if you have problems with your knees or your hips or anything else, you can just slide right down. You don't have to worry about stepping over anything. So that worked out pretty good.
I took some photos. I think I got everybody. They're in my camera, so after the service, I'll be glad to share this, and I can have them printed if we would like.
If you want to email them to me, I'll put them on the Facebook page.
Oh, sure.
I took 2 just when we started, put on the Facebook page, and then I set my phone up to do the Facebook, but I forgot to start the Facebook recording. So the whole thing went in my phone and went right out again, and it never went on the air. So that's the reason there was no Facebook from last week. And I made sure I had everybody in the picture, and the sound was good and everything else. I just forgot to hit the little button that says go live. So I was trying to do too many things at the same time. Okay, anything else? All right, our prelude, what do we hear?
Well, there are a lot of titles. The first is Holy Manna, then there's Brethren We Have Met to Worship, and then there's God Who Stretched the Spangled Heavens, and there's also When the Summer Sun is Shining. So anything you wish to hear.
Do we have a preference? Your choice.
Lots of titles.
It's your choice, whatever you'd like to play. Very nice.
Thank you.
And I have to say how blessed we are with a congregation of like 10 people, that we have 2 people who are musically inclined. And even when one is gone, we have another to take their place. So it's just, it's amazing. I never get over being thankful for that. Does anybody recognize the picture from your grade school days? Might be kind of hard to see.
Oh, Sir Walter Raleigh
Sir Walter
putting
Raleigh.
his cloak across the mud puddle.
For Queen Elizabeth, yes. So what's our topic for the day?
Manner.
Manners. We'll talk about manners. We'll talk about etiquette. We'll talk about the difference. What brought this on was my 2 loafers, hangers-on, whatever, have finally departed. And I'll give you the whole story kind of in bits and pieces as we go along. I really tried to discourage them from staying and did all kinds of things, and they just were like leeches. I just couldn't pry them loose. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but they disappeared one night and they never came back. So, and I changed the lock, so now they can't come back. So, but that's what got me thinking about manners. How people respect each other, how you treat each other, how you treat the belongings of other people. And that's the other thing that inspired that was this. I don't know how many of you saw this picture on the news. This happened in the state of Washington this week. This guy is a corrections officer. I think he's like 35 or 36 years old, has a 7-year-old daughter, been married, I don't know, 10 or 12 years. And he and his wife in this rural town in Washington were stepping out in front of their house on a state route. There were a bunch of deer trying to cross the road, so they were kind of telling the traffic to slow down. A guy drove by, rolled down his passenger window, and shot this guy and killed him. Said he was afraid for his life. He thought they were doing something in the middle of the road, which everybody else and the guy they found, he just drove off then after he shot
He
him.
didn't see the deer, huh?
Well, even if he saw the deer or didn't see the deer, I mean, why would you shoot somebody standing in the middle of the road? And he said he just fired a warning shot, but he shot him right in the head and killed him, right in front of his wife and his kid. And then said, I was afraid. That whole thing, you know, I was afraid for my life. I thought they were attacking my car. Like, people are crazy, and crazy people are getting guns, and they're not afraid to use their guns. What is going on? That's part of the thing about manners too. Okay, and I don't remember the guy's name. I think it's Jerry something, but just a really nice guy. Everybody praised him in the neighborhood. He was very helpful, very considerate. I mean, think about it, going out and trying to slow traffic down so the deer can cross the road. Not only for the deer, but you're also helping people not speed through and hit a deer and kill yourself. So just a very considerate person. All right, chalice lighting is a true story. A burst of sunlight appears through leafy branches. The chalice is for the living, the changing, the becoming. This chalice is for losing the script of your life, the chapters about who you are in other people's stories. This chalice is for the lost GPS that was supposed to show you how to get where they expected you to go. Where they expected you to go. This chalice is for skipping the directions, coloring outside the lines, painting not by the numbers, but by silence, by wild abandon, with a brush you made yourself. From deep inside, startling, vivid, a new voice that already knows you. Finally, a true story. Our opening hymn is 360. Here we have gathered. Kindness can heal us as we give, we gain. All right, our affirmation is another long one. Toward a place of wholeness. We are Unitarian Universalists. When we lift up our 7 principles, some of us think of them as a form of theology, but they are more important to our collective than that. They do not tell us what we should believe. They tell us how we should be. They tell us how we should act in the larger world with each other. We are brought here today by the fact that Unitarian Universalism has fallen short of that image that was presented to the world and to many of those who embraced this religion. But we are also brought here today by the truth that Unitarian Universalism has shifted course to move toward a place of wholeness, a place that perhaps never existed for us as a denomination. It has been a long and sometimes unforgiving road to today, but we are here today because we are mindful of that past, because we have hope for the future. We want the practice of this faith to be a fulfilling manifestation of its promise. Open your hearts. Seek new ways of understanding. Come, let us worship together. Joys and concerns. They had sunflowers on sale at Kroger, so we have real sunflowers along with our artificial sunflowers. Nice and bright and optimistic. And maybe the news is a little more optimistic. I hate to say optimistic news of war, but the Ukrainians are kicking butt. They have their little drones out in the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea, not Baltic, the Black Sea, down around Crimea, and they are hitting the Russian ships right and left with drones. So there's no civilian casualties, but they're causing damage to the Russian Navy, which is almost going to have to evacuate some of the ports down there. They are also manufacturing their own drones, and they're flying them into Russia, into Moscow, and hitting military targets. So little Ukraine is standing up for itself. It still is going to be a long, drawn-out battle, but it is not going to be the kind of thug fest we thought it was at the beginning, with a giant country and giant nation overwhelming this little nation underneath it. Anything else?
Like a light candle for the Richard Bowers, my nephew's wife's father passed away. He was from this area, lived in Greenville for many years.
Okay.
Richard Bowers.
Richard Bowers. Anything else? All right. I guess I'll light a candle for the two girls. Shay was one of them, and I can't remember the other's name right now. I never saw her. She stayed kind of sequestered in the building the whole time and never really came out. But just one of those strange things. We'll talk about that a little as we go along. The one girl turns out was a drug user. As I was cleaning out, I was finding all kinds of needles and syringes, the little ones that the diabetics use, the little tiny needles, little tiny syringes. So I don't know what she was injecting or where she was injecting it, but my understanding is she got an abscess on her leg, which got infected. She got a blood infection, and then she got an infection in the sac around her heart. Pericarditis is what they call it. And that is actually a life-threatening infection. So she was at Wayne Hospital, then she went to ICU at Wayne Hospital, then she went to ICU at Miami Valley Hospital, and the last I heard, she was transferred to Muncie. I have no idea whether any of this is true, because this is what the other girl told me on the text, and I've learned that nothing that she tells me is verifiable. Nothing that she tells me is you can take as fact, and we'll go through part of that too. That's kind of what we're talking about today, and that's kind of what inspired this. I've never run across that before, and it's a learning experience, and I love new experiences, and I don't regret doing it at all. I would never do it again, but I don't regret doing it at all, just for the experience of meeting people like that and trying to understand. These girls, the one that came out and interacted with the rest of the world, that was Shay, has lived a really hard life, but she is smart, she's intelligent. I was giving her books by Montaigne, books from poets, and she was reading those, and we were talking about that stuff. So I'm thinking, here's somebody, and I kept telling her, I can get you a car, I can get you a driver's license, I can get you a job, we can set you up in an apartment. And yet, every step forward had 2 steps back. So we'll talk about that as we go along. I hope you don't mind me kind of processing this as we go along.
And if you would also light a candle for those individuals who obviously have lost their lives, but also those trying to survive that horrible catastrophic flooding in Libya.
Oh yes, Libya and Morocco.
And what takes one for granted infrastructure, which they have none of in Libya. And so many more victims because of that lack of infrastructure and antiquated infrastructure because of poor governance.
And that's, I think, the key. What we're talking about is poor governance in both situations. Libya is still in the midst of a civil war. There's arguments. They wouldn't let the security people, they wouldn't let the UN and anybody else come in because who knew who was in control of the area. But in Libya, 2 dams failed after a predicted rainstorm. Nobody ordered evacuations. Nobody said this is a dangerous thing. Everybody knew the dams had not been maintained for 20 years and were in a dangerous position anyway. A third of that town was wiped out, and a third of the people, they say like 11,000 now. I've heard estimates up as high as 30,000 people were just washed and buried and washed out to sea. And all of it was preventable. All they would have had to do is say those dams are in danger, evacuate the lower end of town where the river goes through town. Morocco, the earthquakes were tremendously dangerous because they used mud bricks for buildings in the high Atlas Mountains. Mud bricks are very good at insulating for cold and insulating for heat. So at night when it's cold, it keeps the inside warm, and in the daytime when it's hot, it keeps the inside cool. The trouble with mud bricks is when you have an earthquake, they just turn to powder. There's no crevices. There's no places where there's pockets of air where people can survive. So all those houses just smash down into nothing but a pile of sand and brick and dust. And they're not finding hardly any survivors there. But the king of Morocco runs the country, was in his multi-million-dollar apartment in Paris for 19 hours. He never went back to Morocco. He never talked to the government in Morocco. So the government, or what passes for government, sat there and did nothing for 19 hours. And then, because they're mad at the French, because the French insulted them, they said, we don't want any French Red Cross coming in. They won't let the American rescue people come in with dogs and supplies. So here's the government letting their people basically die, and yet what do you hear the people chanting in the villages? Long live the king. That's the same mentality as you have to wonder that's going on in this country when people are having problems and then supporting a candidate that basically causes their problems and makes their problems worse, and yet they continue to stick with this person. So I guess we're going to look at the human condition in a microcosm of these 2 girls, but it expands out to what the civilized world is all about. And sometimes I guess I don't want to get too gloomy, because sometimes people think it's getting worse and worse and the good old days were better, but look back at history, it wasn't any better. There were massacres, there were disasters, there were thousands of people dying needlessly since the beginning of human history. So I don't know, maybe there's ebbs and flows, maybe it's better at some times and worse at other times, but we don't want to totally lose heart. Okay, so that candle is for the Bowers family and for those thoughts and prayers, those fears, those hopes and dreams that you have but are not able to verbalize. Maybe they're not even able to come to the fore and you don't even recognize them yet. Our children's story is not really a children's story. How many of you are aware of the movie King's, I'm not going to think of the movie.
The King's Speech.
Not the King's Speech. That's an actual movie. This guy is in the King's Speech too. Colin Firth is in the King's Speech. This is the King's Service.
Okay.
It's a funny movie. If you haven't seen it, we'll give you a little taste of it here. But it's the prime mover in this movie, in this scene I'm going to show you, is manners maketh the man.
Listen, boys, I've had a rather emotional day, so whatever your beef with Eggsy is, I'm sure it's well-founded. I'd appreciate it enormously if you could just leave us in peace until I finish this lovely pint of Guinness.
You should get out of the way, Grandad, you'll get out and all.
The angel, you should go. Excuse me.
You're looking for another rim boy, they're on the corner of Smith Street.
Manners? Make it. Nah.
Which is a quote.
Do you know what that means?
it's a little violent, but it's the James Bond theory, and it's the James Bond thing with a kind of a comic spoof to it. If you haven't seen it, they've made The Golden Compass was the second one. I think they've actually made a third one. The first one was the funniest one, and also I think was the best one, like in many movies. But it's set in the British. It's kind of like an underground secret service. These gentlemen have actually it's gentlemen and ladies. It's equal opportunity. Have lots of funding, and they have like secret bases and all these fancy tools like James Bond, the umbrella that shoots the stun gun, the watch that shoots the dart that gives you amnesia. But they're all dressed up as British upper class with their tie and their umbrella, and they go around the world trying to protect the world from evildoers. And Eggsy is the young man there who comes from a lower class background, is kind of incorporated into this situation. So, but that's, the quote that they're doing is, "Manners maketh the man," and that comes from, that's an actual quote from the 1500s, from a guy named William Horman. And the history of manners, there's etiquette and there's manners. Does anybody have a thumbnail difference between the two? Etiquette is kind of the formal list, the formal description of the way you should act. Etiquette has always been kind of an upper class, high class thing. When you learn etiquette, you came from an upper middle class or prominent wealthy family, and you learn which fork to eat with, your salad fork, your dinner fork, your dessert fork. You learn which wine glass to use with which color wine. Certain red wines go in a certain shape of glass, and a white wine goes in another shape of glass. All these arbitrary, arcane, weird things, and we usually attribute that to England, but every country has their own culture. So that's what etiquette is, when you learn how to behave as upper class. Manners is how you express etiquette. It's how you treat other people, and manners applies to everybody, whether you're low class, high class, no class. Good manners is something that people display, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about, is the changing in manners. These girls, that's what kind of got me thinking about the whole manners thing. Basically, it's a complete absence of manners. Time. I would take them, they would say, "Are you going to Greenville from Wayne Lakes?" "Yeah, I'm going to be in Greenville running some errands." "Can you take us to Walmart?" "Sure, you can do your shopping." So I drop them off at Walmart. I say, "You got about 30 or 45 minutes. I have to go to Rural King, Kroger, and a couple other places, and I'll text you when I'm ready to leave." So I text and say, "I'll be at Walmart to pick you up in 10 minutes. This is like after 30 minutes, 40 minutes. They've had plenty of time. They say, "Okay, we'll be ready." So I get there and say, "I'm outside waiting for you." I wait 10 minutes. I'm not waiting any longer. I text them again, "I'm leaving in 5 minutes." Nothing. So I leave in 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, I'm like 5 miles down the road, or half a block down the road. "Oh, we're ready to go. Where are you? You're not here." "All right, I'm coming back to get you." So I come back. "Are they out there at the door?" "No, they went back inside again." "I'm here at the door again. I'm going to be here for 5 minutes. If you don't come back, if you don't come out, I'm not waiting for you." They used to play this game constantly, multiple times, not just one time. And I got to where I just basically left them, and I wouldn't go back to get them. I mean, before I would go back to get them, and then they wouldn't be there again. They have no concept of time, no concept of consideration for other people. They basically exist using other people. They want to, I was at Kroger one time, and she had money in Cash App or something, and her thing wouldn't work, her Cash App wouldn't work. So we're standing in line with 20 people behind us. She's got a $100 grocery bill. I said, "All right, you got the money, I'll pay your grocery bill here, and then you pay me back when we get out to the truck." Okay, so she goes to her Cash App thing and pretends like she's paying me, and it never comes. I never get the money back. So I say the next day, "I never got your Cash App payment." "Oh, something must be wrong with that, I'll fix that." And then it just never happens. So that type of thing happens over and over again. There's a certain kind of people that do things like that have no concept, and I don't know, that's, once again, her mother is constantly giving her things, taking care of her, bringing her back. I think her father has probably left, or there's some family dysfunction there. And you never can tell when people give you their life story, whether it's true or not. I kind of believe the stuff she told me. She's had her teeth knocked out in a fight. She's covered with tattoos. She's got scars on her legs and burns on her legs. So I know she's led a really rough life. She has at least 2 kids that her mother is taking care of, and they were taken away by the state. And that's the other thing. I think you can really tell somebody by the way they treat their children, because I've been with people before who've had a tough life, but the one thing they're concentrating on is, I want my kids, I want to keep my kids, and I want to keep my kids safe. And they'll do anything for that. These girls, or this particular girl, I mean, she would say, oh, my son's birthday's tomorrow, can you loan me $50 to buy him a present? And then, or my mom, the best one was, my mom's birthday's tomorrow, I'd like to get her something, can you loan me some money? And we were at Kroger. And I said, here, Kroger's got roses on sale, 12 roses for $10. That's a heck of a deal. So get her a card, and I'll get you the roses. And she lives in Richmond, I'll deliver them to her by hand, so she can have a present from you. So I go ahead and buy the roses, and she gets the card, and I say, then fill out the card, and give me the address tonight, and I'll take the roses over tomorrow. Never hear from her. Go back there the next day. Actually, I gave the roses to my wife. Go back the next day, she never said a thing about it. You know, what happened to the roses, what happened to the thing? And I said at the end of the day, did you get something for your mom? No. So it's just like, and your mom's taking care of her kids. And her mom is giving her money. So the level of disregard for other people is monumental. But I know that goes on in other people. You can see it going on all around you. So let me go back a little bit. We got to do a little bit of history here. Etiquette is rules and manners, social status, which fork to use, that type thing. Manners apply to everybody, and that's how we behave to each other. The history is the first book on manners they discovered was written in Egypt. 2,500 years ago, there is one of those little hieroglyphic books on how people should behave to other people. And it continues on through. The Greeks, Socrates, Epicurus, all those people wrote books on what good manners would be, how you behave to other people. George Washington had a book on manners for children. Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac. Remember Poor Richard's Almanac? A penny saved is a penny earned, which Franklin didn't say. He said a penny saved is a penny saved, and they kind of changed it into a penny saved is a penny earned. So, and they did that to a lot of sayings. They've kind of updated them. So manners are universal. The one thing we learn as we travel around the world, and if you've traveled around the world, what's the first thing you learn when you go to any other country?
Thank you.
Please and thank you. We were in Greece. The only Greek I learned was parakalo, prasto. Parakalo is please, prasto is thank you. And you can go a long way with that. French, s'il vous plaît, merci. German is bitte and danke. In Sweden, it's schnellhi and tack så mycket. Every country and everybody appreciates, if you can't speak their language, they appreciate when you at least attempt to approach them in their own language, or to use some of their own language. And you'll find, I speak a little German and a little Swedish, and every time I would try to speak German with the Germans and Swedish with the Swedish, they would always speak English because they know English a million times better than I know their language. So it's hard to actually learn the language when you're there because they won't let you speak the language to them. So, but it's still fun to try and learn. Good example of manners is Goldilocks. Remember Goldilocks and the Three Bears? Goldilocks went into the bears' home. She ate their porridge. She sat in their chairs and actually broke one of them because it was too small for her, and she slept in their beds. A little girl with bad manners. It's kind of how I look at these girls. They were not, and I haven't really decided, I don't think they were intentionally being difficult or bad or nasty to people. I don't think they did it intentionally. I think part of it maybe is the way they grew up, the family they grew up in. They didn't learn manners. The people they were associated with, they didn't learn manners. The people they were with beat them up, took advantage of them. Their whole life is built on people taking advantage of other people. And that happens if you're in the business world, or if you're looking at advertising or anything else. It's people taking advantage of other people. You have to learn to defend yourself, to protect yourself. And yet there are plenty of nice people out there. like Goldilocks, they have no sense of respect for other people, consideration for other people's property, no sense of gratitude. You did me a favor, so I want to thank you for doing that favor, but I'll do a favor for you. No sense of fair play or fair trade back and forth. Another one that's striking me lately, as I've talked to you many times about the drivers who are passing on a double yellow. What's the sign of manners? That really is, it's a law, but it really is more of an indication of manners when somebody passes you. Every time they turn that right turn signal on, when they go around you and say, I'm going to turn in here, there's no real need to do that. But it's like, I acknowledge that you're behind me and I'm saying I passed you and you're there and this is a legitimate thing we're doing. The people that pass you and never do any turn signals, they just zoom around you and go right around. You, in your mind, you create who those people are. Those are people with no manners. Those are people who don't have any respect for other people. Those are drivers who don't really care. And I've had them so bad, I pull out of Wayne Lakes and head toward New Madison. And when you come around that curve on 121 at Wayne Lakes, they're going 55 or 60, and when I pull out of that intersection or the driveway there, I'm only like 100 yards ahead of them. I didn't know they were coming around the corner. So as I'm gradually gaining speed, by the time I get down to the hog farm, I'm probably going 45, maybe 50. And some of these people are passing me at like 65 on a yellow line with cars coming the other way. I have had to hit the brakes before because the car was so close the other way. They can't wait for 5 minutes for me to get up to speed, or just to wait till there's a white dash line so they can pass me legally. They're in such a big hurry and no sense of, and that's kind of what manners is respect for other people. Okay, so are they ignorant? Is it some kind of psychological struggle to assert independence? That's one thing I wondered about these girls. Maybe their activities, maybe their treatment of other people is a sense that they've been wounded in their lives and they're trying to even the score. When they intentionally they have to know that somebody's out there waiting because you texted them. So are they intentionally saying, I want to make you wait for me? I have no power in my life. I don't know what I'm going to have I don't know where I'm going to stay the next night. I don't know if I'm going to have a place to stay. I don't know if I'm going to have electricity. I don't know if I'm going to have food. They don't have a driver's license. They lost their license because they were driving without a license, or they got a ticket and they had their license revoked. Before I knew that, I loaned one of my trucks to drive to go visit their mom. I didn't get it back for 3 days. I had to find it and take it back from them with my spare key. But while they were driving the car or the truck, they were stopped and they didn't have a license. So they got a ticket for that, and then they didn't have proof of insurance because I didn't have the insurance card in there. They never told me about any. They didn't tell me they were stopped. They didn't tell me that. All of a sudden, she says, can I borrow $200? I have to go to court and pay my fine. For what? Well, I got stopped driving without a license. I said, you don't have a license? So it just goes on and on and on. Things that you can't imagine any normal, sane person doing is completely normal for these people. So are they trying to put some power back into their lives? Are they trying to say, I can't control anything else, but I can make someone else's life almost as miserable as mine? And or are they saying, you're a nice person, you're doing me a favor, that doesn't make any sense, I'm going to punish you for that? I mean, what would be the sense if somebody does a favor and takes you to the Walmart and then you don't go back, when they come to pick you up, you don't go out, you don't even text them and say you're coming out? I just don't understand the concept of that. There has to be some psychological reason for it, some reason that you're striking back at the world that's been evil to you and you're trying to inflict pain on other people. And maybe that's part of what it is. Maybe it's they're high on drugs and they're standing in a corner staring at a box of cornflakes and don't even know time has passed. I don't have any idea. And I asked them, and I never did get an explanation out of them. They just kind of look at you and go on about their business. They live like they're living under a bridge, and we talked about homeless people before. What's the solution for homelessness? Some of these people, and maybe it's a mental illness. I hadn't thought about that before, but it could be the edges of mental illness, the same reason that some people want to stay homeless. They don't want to be in a confined space. And the solution for homelessness was, in some of these cities, the experimental plans they tried, they built, bought apartment complexes, put these people in an apartment for free, paid their utilities for free, got them basic furnishings for free, had somebody come every week and clean their apartment for free, and tried to regiment their lives and get their lives on basically a clean, because and I give these people credit, I give these girls credit for one thing, they know how to live under the bridge, because the first place they started out was my garden shed. It has electricity, but it has no plumbing and it has no water. So I gave them a porta pot, which is what you use, it has the legs on it, and they would do their business in a porta pot and take it out and take the lid off the septic tank and dump it in the septic tank, if you can imagine that. They were getting their water from the tap on the side of the cottage and bringing it back, and they had a big tub. They were doing their laundry in a tub, and yet with no income that I could see, and I'm sure they were getting food stamps, and their mother, each one of their mothers was giving them money. They wouldn't drink the water from the tap, from the cottage. They were buying those gallon jugs of bottled water. And I told you about the food. They would get food from the food bank. And then just because they didn't pay for it and didn't have any sense of value, they got a ham for Christmas, and a ham was like a $22 ham. It was from the harvest thing that we contribute to. The money we contributed bought that ham, and 2 weeks later I find it in the trash, not even opened. You mean they had a dog, which, why would they even have a dog? They buy their dog canned dog food instead of cheap kibble dog food. I just one thing after another after another. They could have fed the ham to the dog and been farther ahead than just throwing it out. So, what is that sense of not having a sense? If you don't value anything, you have no sense of value. Clothes, they had bag after bag after bag of clothes. I'm thinking, even at Goodwill, if clothes are $5, where do they get these clothes? Then one of my friends said, you see these bins sitting around at the gas stations for clothes donations? They're going and stealing clothes out of those bins and sorting through it to get what they want. So I've had to throw away, I don't know, 6 or 7 50-gallon drum-sized bags of clothes that they just left there. It's just, if you have no sense of value, if nothing is valuable to you, then you don't think it's valuable to anybody else. It's a completely different way of living, and I don't know what the solution, I don't know what the answer is. So, no car, no license, no job, no home, no future, no plan. They're smart, they're intelligent. Like I say, I'd give them books to read, and they would read it, and they could discuss it intelligently. They like music, but it's like there's no integration. They're not real people. There's like parts of them are real and parts of them aren't real. And the worst thing, I guess, is if you have nothing else, nobody else you can depend on a full-time basis, they depend on each other. Those two girls had a really solid relationship with each other, but they fought constantly. They insulted each other, they yelled and screamed, and maybe that was our home life, when you yell and scream. I had to tell them, if you're fighting outside and the neighbors can hear you, you're going to get evicted, because the sheriff's going to come and you're not going to be able to stay there because you're causing a neighborhood disturbance. That didn't seem to slow them down at all. They even came to blows. The one of them had a black eye the one day, and I said, what happened to you? It says, oh, we got in a fight last night and she hit me. It's like spousal abuse, whether it's male and female, or male and male, or or female and female. Can you imagine being in a relationship where you yell and scream at each other and yet you're dependent on each other, and that's the love of your life? I guess the only solution I'm coming up with is a mental illness. So, okay, but it is a community. That is kind of what it comes down to. That's what manners do, is they create a community. They create a sense of solidarity, a sense of you can rely on people. When people turn that turn signal on, when they pull in front of you after they passed you, that's a sense of, well, there's a decent person and I can rely on that person. If I break down, they'll probably stop at the side of the road and help me. So there's still a lot of those people left. Manners have changed through the years. One of the funniest ones, they've changed and they've not changed. Erasmus of Rotterdam had in his book, this is in the 1600s, the manners of farting at the table. He said, if you have to pass gas, leave the table if you can. If you can't, cough and try to disguise it. It's the exact same advice that Miss Manners would give you today. Try to leave the table, and if you can't, cough or make something to cover it up. So I got a big kick out of that. Forks were for the rich. In those days, they didn't have forks. So part of the manners was you needed to wash your hands. And what they said was you want to wash your hands where everybody can see you, because when you're dipping your hand into the communal bowl, everybody wants to know that your hands are clean. But think about that, until the 1700s and 1800s, nobody had forks. They used knives to cut their meat and to stab the meat. But basically, you just reached into the bowl and ate with your fingers. So having clean fingers was an important thing, even though people only took a bath when they were born and when they died and maybe when they were married, because being clean wasn't considered to be that important. But clean hands were, even in those days. And they talked a lot about double dipping. They had sauce on the platter where the meat was. So when you had your bread, you could dip your bread in the sauce. But when you take a bite, then you don't dip your bread back in the sauce. That's the same. We have the same rules today at Thanksgiving or whatever else. Our rules haven't really changed that much. Think about Christmas. Our manners used to be you didn't open your Christmas presents till everybody got their presents. All the presents were distributed. That was just polite that you wait, and then you go one at a time and you show people what you got, and you show your appreciation for it. There's all kinds of little manners that basically show respect for other people. But basically, these are reservoirs of kindness, is the way I look at it. Helping strangers, social contact, social contracts, mutual obligations. The kind of glue that holds society together is the manners you see and manners have changed. It used to be everybody opened doors for women, particularly car doors. You went around and opened the door for them. Used to be in the old days, the man always walked on the outside, on the curbside, basically, supposedly to protect them from a splash from a car driving by, or in medieval times from people throwing slop out the upstairs window. It would always land farther out, not next to the street. So it's kind of like Sir Walter Raleigh putting his cloak down. Those things haven't changed. That kind of creates a sense of community, a sense of respect for each other. How much is that changing? And I keep going back to Rome, what caused the fall of Rome, because there was a civilization that endured for 1,500 years, spread all over the world, was the most powerful civilization to that time, and actually one of the most powerful even up to this time. How did the Roman civilization just kind of crumble and fall apart? One thing they mentioned in here was that in the Roman Senate, when the first Senate became a republic and the senators were elected and they elected their consuls and proconsuls, there was respect between the senators. They talked to each other, they discussed, they debated, they came back, and then they had meals together, they drank together, they socialized together no matter what their conflicts were. The primary loyalty was to the city and the state of Rome, and to make Rome and the city of Rome a safer place to be, a good place to be for everybody. I'm not saying it was perfect. They had tons. They relied on slavery. They relied on conquest to conquer new countries and then suck all the important valuables out of that country and bring it back to Rome. But there was a sense of collegiality. And then if you think about America when it was founded, what the Senate was like, and what's going on now. You think about people talk about the old days in the Senate when the Republicans and Democrats would go back into the cloakroom and they would have drinks together and they'd smoke a cigarette together and they'd go to parties together and they would argue and insult each other on the floor because of their respective parties, but they still respected each other back behind closed doors. That has begun to disappear. Now in the Senate, and many people have lamented this, there is a sense of isolation, a sense of party loyalty, no matter what. The country is not what's important. Your party is what's important. Getting your way is what's important. If the opposing party nominates somebody for the Supreme Court, you just block that nomination until your guy gets in, and then you jam your guys through. There's no sense of fair play anymore. Is this what happened in Rome? As the Senate began to disintegrate and the senators began to say, I want what's mine. I'm in the Senate to make myself rich. I want to have a big estate. I want to have more slaves. I don't care what happens to the country. I'm going to get my stuff first, and I'll last long enough that the country falls apart. I'll be long gone afterwards. That's kind of what seems to be happening today. And yet, There still are people who turn the light on, or turn the turn signal on when they turn right. There's still people who will open the door for you. There are people you hear about all the time at Arby's or McDonald's that pay it ahead. In other words, when they go through the line, they'll pay for the people's ticket, the meal ticket behind them. There are people at the grocery store, and you hear these stories all the time. Some person can't pay their grocery bill, so the person behind them will go ahead and pay the bill for them, not expecting any money back. You hear about police officers. A guy in the news this week, an old man at a restaurant couldn't pay his bill. He was flustered that his credit card wasn't being accepted. He actually called the police himself because he didn't know what else to do. The policeman came up and the credit card would not be accepted. It was the only one he had, so the policeman paid his bill. The guy asked for the policeman's phone number so he could pay him back, and the policeman refused. He said, "That's my gift to you." Kindness is still there. It's still important. It's still something we want to build on, and it's still something that even if you're given back a slap in the face, as Christ said, you turn the other cheek. And basically, think of it as the future of society depends on you being a good, kind, mannered person. Okay, comments. And that's manners maketh a man. I'm not sure, I found this picture and I don't know what it means. It's stub pencils, pencils on both ends, pencils broken, and then two guys bending over. I never did figure out what that was about, but I like the idea of manners maketh a man, so that's the reason I put it in there.
Jim, I think in terms of the situation you described with the woman who lived in your house or shed. I would also, if I experienced that as well, scratch my head and wonder why. Your best answers to that, or insight, I should say, to that particular situation for you, is to talk to an experienced social worker with a background experience or training in psychology and psychiatry. One of the major issues with people who behave in that manner that I've read about, and I know very little, they suffer from first of all, they suffer from a lack of a locus of self-control. But more importantly, they're unable to, by usually previous experiences, they're unable to anticipate and accept consequences.
Right.
And so when they got the text and they were in the store, but they were not out there were no consequences, okay? But more importantly, they didn't anticipate making you angry or sad or happy or jubilant. They were incapable of that, either through behavior in a psychological construct or because they had experienced that so many times in their life that it brought it out in them. Manners are learned also, okay? But they're not just learned, they're reinforced. And often that reinforcement comes from making you yourself perceive and feel satisfied with what you did. They were incapable of that.
Yeah, that's the carrot and the stick. And I tried the carrot. You know, I said she didn't have her license because she didn't pay her fine. I said, I'll pay your fine and we'll get your license back. I can get you a car. And you can do it on time, we can get you a job. I laid out the carrots, all these things that you could have a good apartment, you could have all these things that you want. And they do have a sense of consequences because when they didn't come out at Walmart and I said, I'm leaving, they didn't say, oh, don't leave us, what are we going to do? They just started calling their whole list of friends on their phone until they found somebody to come pick them up.
That's because they have been enabled and facilitated for that behavior for their entire lives.
And that's what I'm saying. You know, when you get discouraged and think nobody cares anymore, there are hundreds of people that care. These two girls, I don't know how wide their support network is between their mothers, their relatives, their sisters, all the guys or whoever, because people would pick them up and take them.
Enabling.
Yeah, people enabled them, and people were doing them a favor, trying to be nice to people who are on the down and out, and yet it was never appreciated. So I can see why conservatives get burned out by that and say they don't deserve to be taken care of. But everybody deserves to be taken care of. The trick is finding a way to take care of them that doesn't allow them to take advantage of other people.
And the relationship in the black eye simply as explained by codependency.
Right. Yep. And like I say, I don't know what the answer is, but I do know they know what consequences are. In the stick, to get them out, they weren't paying their electric bill, so I would shut the electric off. And then, you know, I couldn't leave it shut off all the time, so I turned it back on. So then I went in and I pulled all the 30 amp breakers so they couldn't run the air conditioners. And then I pulled the 30 amp breakers so they couldn't run the water heater. So all they had was water. But I went down one time and turned the water off at the well and put a padlock on the well casing, and they went out with a crowbar and pried the padlock off and turned the well back on.
What you described, Tim, seems to me to go well beyond the question of manners.
Yeah.
Manners came about, I'm sure, because once people lived in community, they needed some way of making that work. And it's hard, it's just
Right.
practical to come up with some agreements about how to behave, and from those, other things sprouted, the more formalization of manners. And even people who wrote about etiquette, let's take Emily Post, I think at the heart of that kind of etiquette was always kindness and respect for others.
Respect for others.
And without respect for other people and a desire to make it work to live in community, then, as your example shows, then there's just a breakdown of relationships. But that goes so far beyond manners. I mean, it really seems to me,
Well,
you know.
the beginning is manners and the description is manners, but they're psychologically disturbed. And that you can see that if all of society was like that, that's when they talk about Armageddon and post-nuclear war, when everybody's out for each other and nobody cares about anybody else. That's the disintegration of civilization that we're talking about. And that's what their example would be if that's what life was like. What gives me heart is the fact that they had all these people that would go out of their way to help them. And even when they were spit on or ignored or kicked in the back, and people would still they're sequential. It's like I've done my turn. It's somebody else's turn now, and they're going through life just kind of preying on one person after another person. But the question is there a tipping point when so many people get burnt out, kind of like in the Senate, when they give up on collegiality and they give up on manners? And that's what I don't know. I'm hopeful that that's not going to happen, because I don't see it happening now. I still see plenty of people being nice to other people. I mean, you can be at Lowe's trying to load a 16-foot 2x4, and some guy drives in and says, "Oh, you need help with that? And we'll help you load your lumber." I mean, that's just manners. That's just being nice to some other person, and you do the same thing for other people, and that's the response that you get. Why are you doing that? Because I would hope that if I was in need, somebody would do it for me. So that's kind of where we're at, and that's kind of what church is like, and that's kind of what community is all about. So we want to strengthen that community, and we want to help each other stay with that community. Okay, I've blabbed on here too long. So I appreciate you allowing me to vent, to go through this process. I have not given up on helping people, but I'm going to be a lot more careful the next time before I throw a whole building in it and take responsibility for their electric bill and everything else. So, okay, our offering. If you have something, please feel free to share. If you need something, contact us and we will help you, or we will direct you to the people, because I have had people contact us and I say go to Community Action or to Fish. We do not give out money for your electric bill, but there are places that will do that. But if you need a place to come to church and have moral support, we're always here for you. So. our final hymn is 326. Let all the beauty we have known. For extinguishing the chalice, this is something that I thought you might be interested in, something I at least want to bring to your attention. It's called the Shared Pulpit. It's an online program for lay people, August 9th, 2023, the book cover for the Shared Pulpit. Reverend Erica Hewitt, which I use a lot of her material for the program here. The UUA's Minister of Worship Arts and author of the Shared Pulpit invites lay people to join her in this virtual 8-session sermon writing experience beginning in October 2023. Please read the following frequently asked questions before clicking through to our application page. What is the Shared Pulpit? Transformational small group program is founded on the belief that lay people have the wisdom, skills, and lived experience to create meaningful sermons. The Shared Pulpit centers on personal experience, refined through theological reflection, as participants learn about the theory and theology of preaching. Those participants practice writing and speaking with authenticity, gradually building towards sermon-length reflections. What's different about this offering? This virtual program is being offered to pairs of lay people from the same congregation, so they're supported in developing leadership skills and shifting the worship culture of their congregation. When will the program be held? Once 8 participants are selected, 4 pairs of lay people representing 4 congregations, Reverend Erica will facilitate the 8 sessions beginning in October. Meetings will occur regularly, but not necessarily once a month. The dates and times of meeting sessions will be selected by the participants. Is there a cost? Yes. When confirmed, each participant will be expected to pay $100 for the course. The money goes directly to worship web programs, not to Erica. They will receive a free copy of the Shared Pulpit. We recommend that congregations pay this fee as a gesture of stewardship and investment in the participants and congregation's worship life itself. Since the UUMA rate for a single sermon is $270, $330, $200 per congregational team is a fair and worthwhile investment. What else should I expect? To center relationships and mutual encouragement. People who approach the Shared Pulpit as a writing seminar will likely be frustrated, as each session will prioritize covenant over grammar and trust over wordsmithing. How will applicants be chosen? It all depends on how much interest there is. If more people apply than the program can accommodate, Erica will speak to applicants' references, take their identities into consideration, and make choices that create a balanced group of participants. I'm interested, what next? Talk to the people in your congregation, find a buddy to inspire and join you. Please use this link to apply as individuals. Erica hopes to close applications and select participants by September 29th, 2023. For more information, contact worshiplab.uua.org. I thought that was important just to get people thinking. It's basically too late for this year, but it might be something to consider. Lay people is a tremendous resource. That's what we're using, and I don't think we're having any problems. I'm enjoying it, and I'm glad to see other people taking part, and I hope more people will. And I know Tara's congregation, there's a real shortage of pastors. People are getting burnt out by the trouble and the problems that pastors go through. The expectations for pastors are really high, and the remuneration is not so high. So there's been a real shortage of pastors, and people can actually do the job well as a real shortage. So she is trying to bring this into her. She's been in her congregation at New Carlisle for I think 3 years now. It was supposed to be a 6-month interim until they hired a full-time person. They can't find a full-time person. So she is encouraging them to do basically what they're doing here. She's actually doing the program herself. And I think the denomination has recognized her abilities and her energy to set up basically lay pastors, to set up teams of people who can take over the leadership of the congregation and get the education they can in the background, but not having to go to seminary. You don't have to have a seminary degree to be a pastor. You have to have a calling. You have to have a sense that you want to contribute, you want to help, you want to do something. So consider that, and if anybody wants to, we can look into that, and we can look into her program as far as education, as far as learning how to be a pastor, learning how to do sermons. So I would encourage everybody on Facebook or anybody else that wants to. We're always looking for people here. So, okay, let's do host leader.
Okay, I got confused. But we'll go on.
Was that all for the night?
But I got mixed up on it somehow, crazy.
It's
That's
a
what
lot.
it was.
Okay, we still have a candle for the Bowers family, for Shay, and I remember the other girl's name is Ashley. Wherever they are, I hope there's some kind of miracle occurs in their lives, and they experience a transformation, and they begin to take responsibility for what is important in their lives. And we're not going to do between their ears. I'm going to give you the final part of the King's Secret Service. This is Exy. He's become a member now. This is his mother.
I rather like that song. Keith Bonnie. Marty's back. You finally come to have that word with me, haven't you, son? We're gonna run away again and pretend you're going to court just like that.
Oh, you mean this? No. No, this bloke was just taking over a tailor shop on Savile Row. He's giving me a job offer. Comes with a lot of perks, including a house.
Come and live with me there, Mum. Come on. Sit down. Only place she'll be visiting is you in fucking hospital. Do you hear?
Just leave him alone! Danny, let it go. Please, just go away.
Right. Yes, do as Mummy says. Why don't you ask that tailor friend of yours to knock up a nice chicken costume and suit you, you mug?
As a good friend once said, manners maketh man.
Fuck off. Exy, I'm gonna shove your manners up your fuck.
So, are we gonna stand around here all day? Or are we gonna fight?
So is that character the one who was the kid in
That's-
the earlier one?
He was the kid in the earlier.
Okay, yeah.
And the outline of the story was his dad, he came from a rough and tumble family. His mother, when his dad died, was living with this other guy, the guy that was the nasty guy and all of his nasty friends. Exy's father was in the King's service, the Secret Service, and gave his life to save the life of the first guy that you saw. So he took a special interest in Exy as a child and watched over him and tried to help him out. Got him a thing to a special school, got him enlisted in the Marine Corps, or the British thing, whatever the Marine Corps was. He dropped out because his mother was being abused by this guy and he wanted to protect his mother. So then the guy from the Secret Service came back and took him by the arm again and brought him into the Secret Service.
And what's the name of the movie?
It's called Kingsman. Kingsman, the Secret Service. That's the first one. And it also has, who's the black guy that was in all the commercials? The funny black guy? I can't think of his name. He's the villain in this, and the whole thing is just, it's a hilarious movie. It's not a movie that I would show in church because there's a lot of bad language and there's a lot of violence. But it's, if you want to watch,
English bad language?
yeah, if you want to watch a fun movie at home,
believe that.
that's good for that.
How rude.
I was looking for oil time, I think it's the last one in El Rio here in the building.
You found it.
There's hot water for coffee, there's donuts, I bought those atomic proof buns for the carry-in, we didn't need them, so you can have all that now. Oh, we need that.
There, I'm sure you realize that we picked up this clip and his paperweight.
Oh, okay, yeah, he was in it. Does anybody wanna get the knife?
I made my first ever zucchini bread yesterday.
Ooh, oh, you love it.
I said, nobody ate it. There's your
Oh,
birthday portion.
I like that.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
I'll send it to you.
Thank you. I appreciate
I mean,
it.
it's on your birthday, so that's your birthday.
Oh, that's great, that's great.
These photos are not all equally good. They're also all edited good, and I'll send them around. All good. I did think I got it.
Nice way of documenting things. How are you guys? Good. Good news.
The regular coffee is still horrible, but decaf can have to scratch it a little bit.
Is the regular coffee instant?
Yes.
Sorry to be such a snob, but I
Oh,
don't do it.
well,
We don't have good coffee, so.
I'll bring some
Well, I
coffee
brought
every
one.
week.
I I learned that from Lou. Years ago, we brought coffee in the church, and I thought, why did you do that?
I did that, yeah.
That's probably bad manners, but.
I've been able to do it.
Oh, I almost backed right into you.
It
That's good manners. That's good manners to say that.
Well, another, there you are.
I was just saying, get 2 new speakers instead of
And
having one
Denise.
come down. Just go from the, like you said, go from the
And I
amplifier.
Let's, that's it, we need one regular camera. They don't realize that when we.
I think that's such a gap in the we at least try it.
Oh, he's smart.
We were talking to I'm sure he did this.
If he likes her dog, he's funny. I'm usually laughing most days before
Oh,
breakfast.
just need the other speaker.
Well, I'll tell you. I appreciate it, Jim.
Oh, I didn't. That made my day. That definitely did.
Right.
That put it out here, it should be the same sound.
See, I put the extra microphone on the phone. And I maybe take the microphone off the phone. That magnifies it. Before
So I have actually heard from some congregations.
Well,
now it comes off real good.
it's all telling everybody.
Yeah, it is. So we can try to take the microphone off. Actually, not do it.
Yeah, do it today on Sunday.
Wow.
See what's
And today also.
Yes, indeed. We are spoiled, aren't we? 2 weeks in a row. Nice Sundays.
Our grandsons came home from college yesterday afternoon, and they've been there a little over a month, but they go home early. I started leaving. Of course, it's his freshman year. He looks like all of a sudden he came into himself, and he was never bashful. But he just must be thriving. It's good to see.
Oh, that's good.
Which one of them did you mention?
Yeah. Because I think in his third year, he's more settled than anyway, but Leo is, and he looks wonderful.
And happy.
Confident.
When they come home looking happy, that's all it was good.
I asked him on classes recording, and he said he's surprised at how easy.
Bristol,
Oh, what is that?
Starbucks is
All right, I'll give it a go. I said, because he's in a biology scholars program, and I know the courses aren't easy. He said he feels like he's got a lot of high school. They're taking most courses in high school. I said, well, enough credit to your high school, isn't it? It is. Yeah, even calculus and all that. Yeah. I said, this is earlier, I was talking about, never mind. I said, well, as long as it's not so easy to forget to, stay on top of it.
That you lose your study skills.
How's he doing?
He likes his own. And he knew before he went that they knew each other. They had chosen each other to be roommates, and it's a three-room.
So he's a,
try that, so you want cream?
Well, I'll let you know.
Okay.
So you never know when the third person and the duo that knows each other, how that will work. He really likes them.
What if he slaps you again? You're gonna need, yes, what if he slaps you again? Well, he keeps on slapping you, that's the problem with turning your cheek. You give a man your coat, what if he comes the next day and takes your other coat? What if he comes the third day and takes the third coat?
Well, what I was gonna say was that, one of the strengths of not believing that Jesus is God in the sense that he was inherent, is that when he has bad advice,
which makes me think they're.
you can ignore it. Because even though generally speaking, I think Jesus actually very much
Can you say that?
his teachings really help you.
If
If
it's
you don't
bad,
think
is it on
he's
top?
God in the sense that
He's
he's
just coming, they're in that door track or above that door track. I think.
I think all that stuff, somebody asked her to go give the blow, and somebody strikes it. That's
Oh, he will, yeah. We'll try to get that cleaned up for Chastity's out.
I know that stuff.
I don't want him to, I don't want him to stress him.
That's why
We try to get him.
that I construct my own route. I don't worry if I'm out safe with it.
So, well, that quantity, we already sell for.
Some people in our church say,
So, we'll put that back in the church, we'll put it back in the
if
church.
you're Unitarian Universalist, you'll do this, you'll make that. If I think.
Always something, let's just hope that there's no bad stemming behind our precious stuff.
Well, and so of course, for some over here,
Thank you for the.
Nah, you're not having me back there. And that's the problem, that's track for
And so
It's
I
got
take
the
some shoes, and I like the chicken.
without getting on the
I
road.
don't know.
Amongst all the others.
There's less, but there's more over here.
That's right down.
So it's right there coming out of that track. And see, I think it doesn't look like somebody's put something. Hey, take care, Kenny. Oh, I'm gonna let you know, Kenny. I got this one.
But generally, his teachings are very powerful to help us to save us from our sins in the sense that we live a better life. And therefore we
It's
say,
oh, you're back to your.
very bad,
She's one.
have that.
So I think he's trying to make life better. That's the whole thing about trying to share.
Is she able to participate in the last community?
Yes, and her mind is.
Natural things, what I use, I think, for yourself.
It's pretty fun.
To counteract that.
Well, and
Oh,
say
why did you take him home?
somebody asks for your code getting a blow.
That's
That's,
I love her.
that's,
We have a couple of
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
and
You know.
to say that if somebody slaps your church on she doesn't matter. You're not supposed to dislike
And
it.
forever.
But
Well, and.
be forgiving. I think forgiving people is a good idea. As Dr. Phil says, if you don't forgive people, then you have all this stress and anxiety and you're mad. And basically, they hurt you twice. They hurt you initially, and then now you've got all this stress because you're angry. And it just goes on and on and on. So,
It's not beneficial.
Oh, we are.
well, I think it benefits both. I think generally speaking,
I like those two.
Jesus had a lot of good advice. But
I always do the point of having
to
those.
realize that Jesus was a human being and didn't always, sometimes spoke
It works
quickly
rough.
and sometimes didn't have good advice.
Is always based
Then
on
you
free.
I think get as mild as usual, where you get the best of it and you ignore the stuff that is, I don't think, good advice. And he had some bad advice, I think.
And I'll contact you sometimes in the middle of the week about using this weekend. You know what I noticed along the way? Your
If
costumes.
that's what conservatives do, then fine.
Because they don't, yeah. I think I have a tendency to
And it was put
punch
together
it.
like that.
I need to
And
take a page from your life.
he told the Catholic Church, look, he said, church councils have been wrong before, so he said, and I'm educated enough to know that, so he said, I don't have to follow church councils, he said, you know, he follows the scriptures. Well, he didn't take it quite far enough. The Bible was written by men, it was put together by men, and the idea was inerrant, that's just a belief that people have. And may or not be true. I'm not gonna say it's not true, but I don't know that it's not true. It's not factual. But I'm very skeptical about whether it's inerrant or not. Very skeptical about that. I think that there's things in the Bible that are good stuff, and there's things in there that
Okay,
are
everybody know what music you
You
want.
have to.
I
You do have to pick and choose. If you're smart, you pick and choose.
No, Chris?
Yes, he is.
But that's-
He's at the races this week.
That's
Certainly,
right.
you do, I'm right on that page
This
with
week
it,
is next
as I do the same thing.
Right.
Well, that's what they're doing.
Roses.
It's, leaving out things that.
They do Smith Festival.
Yes, that's quite a bloomer, isn't it?
So Jesus, you know.
Those are those old ones.
Yeah.
Does it just look year round then? I mean, not year round, but
All
I
summer long,
Does it?
it's still moving, and those are two fresh
mean,
ones.
that is far, really, they're beautiful, just beautiful roses.
They don't take things where the guy prostitutes his wife and his daughters.
So that one is.
This is their bodies. It has blessed you over the years, hasn't it?
Mine has got enough.
Well, I'll see.
Tuesday? Have a great week.
Schools. Right in that same place in Leviticus where all that stuff about homosexuality is, it also says that if you're a farmer, you leave a ring around your field about 10 feet wide. You don't harvest that, and you let the poor people come in there and get that. That's in Leviticus too, and I'm quite certain that all these farmers that live here in Dark County that go to these fundamentalist churches, they're all about homosexuality being wrong because Leviticus says so. But are you guys making a 10-foot ring around your field?
I don't know, we should probably find that out. whether they are.
Yeah, and if they're not, then hey.
I think actually they're trying to even take some of the scientists and farm is, what they're looking
All right, gentlemen, I will say goodbye.
Any preference on the not glass, these flowers here, where you want to see them? Because I'm gonna plant these so we have fresh flowers for next year. I'm thinking, you know, the corner where it comes to the retaining wall, I was gonna plant them there, put like a little fence around it, so Chad doesn't go along.
Yeah, Chad's gonna have trouble with this, you do.
Yes, he doesn't like anything interfere with stuff, but if I put them in the corners.
But it's a very good thought.
More flowers than that.
Dee or someone's waiting.
Yeah.
And they're still blooming down there. Those little Dutch irises.
Yes.
Are they still blooming?
Yeah.
Crocuses.
Crocuses, those years ago.
Is she or Big Claire?
Oh, it's Claire. Claire did, yes. Yeah, we still have two or three of them blooming.
I love it. Okay, I hope to see you all next week.
Yes. If I can get up in time, like
When you get a
this.
copy, let me know, and I'll get you, or unless you have pictures if you want it in the slideshow.
Okay, that'll be Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, I'm never sure. If you have your own pictures, let me know, otherwise I'll just get pictures that fit whatever you want.
I'm forming ideas right now.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, these are nice. They're really beautiful. And the squirrels don't eat that little ball.
That's what I was telling Tammy, I always used to plant tulips and daffodils. The daffodils always came up, and like 3/4 of the tulips never came. I thought, what's going on? And then somebody said, yeah, squirrels and moles and everything else will eat the tulips.
Oh, they think they're potatoes.
Yeah,
They
and so they did, and I tried even planting them in water baskets. And,
That works limited. I tried that.
and maybe I used too big a chicken wire, but they could eat through
Oh, I
it.
know. If you chicken wire, they'll dig in there and get it back.
Yeah, and that's what I found out, that then I'd go back the next year and then the chicken wire staying there, but be no flour in it, so what happened to moles? So something happened.
Yeah.
So, but I like the tulips, and you can get 45 tulips for $10 too, but if they don't come up, you're having gained anything.
My neighbor, Toby Spencer, he's got really nice bird feeders, and I get all the good out of them and watch the birds. He's got this one bird feeder hanging in this bush outside my window, and there's a squirrel that gets up in there, and it's amazing the acrobatic stuff he'll do. He'll get his one paw up here, and he'll hang by that paw, and he'll be eating out of the bird feeder.
If there's a will, there's a way. They're not, the food is a motivator for squirrels.
Yeah.
I watch them. And, you know, that's why they try to engineer these squirrel-proof feeders. And it's fine, these engineers to try to come up with something. Even grease poles. They
Grease poles, and I've seen YouTube is a great place to watch them. They'll jump from trees like 20 feet, they'll jump over and land on a bird feeder. The one I got that works has a spring mounted thing, and when the squirrel gets on it, it closes the trap and they can't get in the door. And if the squirrel's sitting on the feeder where the bar where the bird's set, the door closes when you have enough weight on it, and then they can't eat it.
They can't, so they really,
So that is so far, it worked.
Some of his birds too, they'll come and for every seed that they eat, they throw
Yeah.
one out on the ground.
yeah.
And that's not altogether bad because there's some big birds that are really kind of too big to get up there to the feeder, and they all land on down underneath and eat what the birds are throwing there.
The trouble I had with that is I started putting like window screen underneath it to try to catch those because all the seeds would land on the ground, the birds would land down there and turn it into be a cat feeder.
Oh, yeah.
Because mine's like out by the window with all kinds of bushes and stuff around.
Yeah.
And the birds are on the ground and the cats are getting them. So I was trying to keep the seeds from actually getting them because they would. Blue jays especially will sit down there and I put out those black sunflower seeds.
Oh, they go for those.
And they love those. They like kick out 3 and then eat 1. I don't know what the deal is, but they're so picky.
Some of those little birds, the woodpeckers, nuthatches, they'll hide there. They sit there, I watch them, they'll put them in bark and stuff.
Oh, really?
They'll take extra seeds after they're full and they'll tuck them away in bark and places like that. Particularly nuthatches and titmice, they do that too.
Yeah, they're fun to watch.
I don't have any birds, but you know, you catch our mice, I guess.
Cats got eat too.
I had orange swallows, they came to visit me this year. And
Oh,
they've
did
been
they?
around for a couple of years and they use their own nest on inside my porch.
And I always thought, because barn swallows, and maybe it's because there's no insect, but barn swallows, any barn that's empty doesn't have barn swallows in it, but you have livestock in the barn. When I started 2 years ago, when I had my horse at my neighbor's barn, barn swallows were coming in there, and that, when we were on the dairy farm, that was just, I just used to love that.
Yeah.
Because where we had the calf pens, there was no door, there was like hundreds of barn swallows, and the rafters, some midgets built that place, it was only like 6 foot or 6.5 foot. I practically bumped my head, particularly when the Nord pack got up there, but you could practically reach up and touch the nest, and there was like nest after nest after nest of all these rafters.
There are a lot more of those birds than I suppose, like you say, it's insect control. But they left, they fledged, they had like about 3 or 4 babies they finally had, and when they were,
They hear them cheeping up there.
oh yeah, and then when they're on the edge of the, you know they're gonna do, and I went out about an hour later, they were all gone. They were up on the telephone marks across,
And they're so protected from cats, because when they're on the barn, underneath the beam.
they got all my kitties.
Yeah, but when the nests are on the other side of the beam, there's no way a cat can get up there.
No.
They can't come down from the top, and they can't get in from the side.
And they make sure the babies can fly when they get ready to fly. There's none of that laying on a bush or like a robin, baby robin, which is a sitting duck for my cats.
Yeah.
No, they did, and they've already gone back. Winter, I understand in Brazil.
Some of us, they fly.
They go to Brazil. In the winter.
What does?
Barns
Purple martins and marshmallows.
Oh, okay.
That's a long way.
That's long.
Yeah, hummingbirds, there's still hummingbirds here, but they always fly south too.
I've got hummingbirds yet.
But somebody told me that the hummingbirds you're seeing now are hummingbirds that are in transit from like farther north.
Oh, I bet
They're
so.
not the ones that grew up here, because you could see the little babies when they hatched out, because they're smaller than the adults.
I haven't seen them.
I saw the babies come to the feeder, but now I'm seeing adults. But I still put them on sugar water, because I'm still seeing hummingbirds.
Good, so you think it's going to pass the company?
I think they're in transit on the way south.
They go to Mexico or Central America.
Someplace now, yeah, I don't know how far to go, I never really followed through, but it's still kind of.
It's amazing. Some small creature like that, being able to fly that far.
Yeah.
The sad thing is just the decimation of the natural habitat, and it's just like lightning bugs. I mean, when I was a kid, there were thousands and thousands.
Yeah.
And now you see one here, and you just don't see them anymore.
Not many, and not around the world either.
And the same thing, I never ceased to amaze me when I was a kid. Everybody had a bug screen on front of their hood so it could blow the air up. And you drive 20 miles on the highway and your windshield is covered with splatters of dead bugs.
I remember.
And we hardly ever, like very rarely do I get splatter in the windshield now. So where's all the bugs?
The only time, like late July, early August, there's getting corn bugs everywhere, and they'll still splat on the windshields, because I got them this year. But no other time, you're right.
humans are a scam here. You know, we just, if you watch some of these, I like science fiction, and I watch these science fiction shows, and a lot of them, the theme of them is assholes in space. These beings that are a lot more advanced than the humans, they pick on the humans, and the humans, you know, oh, boo, boo. And I'm like, wait a minute, guys. The same thing that the assholes in space are doing to you, you're doing to other life forms on Earth. You know, Forrest Johnson understands stupid is and stupid does. And I've had people tell me, I'm not real sure I understand that. And I say, I understand it perfectly. Forrest Gump was challenged mentally in some ways, but he lived a very happy life. And what his mother was, the point she was trying to make to him is that it's the end result. These people might be more clever than you in some ways, but you're the one that's happy. So you have this innate wisdom to live your life in a good way. And so it's, you know, us humans, you know, we have all of these tool-making abilities and all of these things like philosophy we do, but in the end result, if we have to plan it all out, then stupid is a stupid does. It's the end result. And humans are a scab on the face of the earth. We have an extinction event going on right now, you know, on the level of the one that happened when the dinosaurs got wiped out. And it's because of all of our crappy ways of doing things.
Well, yeah, we have high order thinking skills, but those high order thinking skills often lead to interpersonal and behavioral issues in terms of ego gratification, personal satisfaction, that we allow that to take over, even though we have order thinking skills, so that we can place in our environment, do the use of pesticides, killing honeybees, killing butterflies, and everything else. Or